80s. They're still mired in a semi-recession. So the key thing is, it's not just having a good period of growth, but what happens when you hit a crisis? China's got a lot of internal problems, and how will they rise to those challenges? India has the advantage that they're quite accustomed to governments not functioning and learning to grow. But again, we saw after when India achieved independence, how the Raj license regime hindered India's growth and stifled their entrepreneurship. But when it's allowed to flourish, it does. We were discussing, Kishore and I, earlier about entrepreneurship in some of the craziest areas in India. There's a thriving industry in a place like Mumbai of people who will deliver lunch boxes from your home to your office. Yeah. In an extraordinary distribution system. And thankfully, the government doesn't seem to be fully aware of it, so they haven't had a chance to crush it. But it's amazing what happens when you allow creativity. But you need institutional structures to nurture that. You go to Africa, for example, no lack of entrepreneurial energy, but it just can't lead to economic takeoff.
We've talked so far about big economies like China and India and the United States. Tell me a little bit about what happened in Singapore and what policies have. I mean, Singapore, if I'm not mistaken, is a little bit bigger than British Columbia in population, between 4 and 5 million people, a city-state. What is it done to react to the global economy and to all of these things happening around it?
Well, unfortunately, Rico Hizon took away my punchline this morning when I was going to ask you all to guess how much the Singapore's GNP will grow by this year. And since the answer you know, it's going to grow by 15% this year. Now, for a country with Singapore's per capita income, which I think is higher than UK's today, to grow by 15% is remarkable. And the reason why Singapore has succeeded is because it has always believed that you need to have a balance between the invisible hand that Adam Smith speaks about, that I think Steve Forbes is the leading proponent of, free markets, and the visible hand of good governance. So you have, on the one hand, an economy that is unfettered, that is allowed to adjust to global market forces, and therefore Singapore is the most open trading nation in the world. The total size of our trade is 3.5 times the size of our GNP. No other country in the UN even comes close. The highest figure is less than 100%. We are 350%. That's how open Singapore's economy is. And at the same time, while we allow the economy to grow, there's massive investment in education. And frankly, even today, schools in California and New York and elsewhere are spontaneously, without any guidance, picking up mathematics textbooks written in Singapore and using them because they say these are the best mathematics textbooks that have been written. And the Singapore government also tries to anticipate future trends. And for example, it's pretty clear that the biotechnology industry is going to be a major industry in the future. And so that's why they decided, okay, why don't we invest $5 billion in training, a huge percent, a few hundred PhDs for training in the best universities in the world, and we build up the talent base that we need for biotechnology. And by the way, I don't know whether you noticed this, Bill, but yesterday's there was a column by Tom Friedman in the New York Times, and the first line of his column said, Kishore Mahbubani came for tea. I went to his house for tea on Sunday. And this is what he reported. We were having a conversation, and Tom Friedman was describing the travails of the Energy Secretary of America, Stephen Chu, who was trying to raise $25 million to do some high-tech research in alternative energy. So I said to Tom, you mean 25 billion, right? No, he said, Kishore, million. I said, no, billion. No, he said, million. I said, well, what can you do with $25 million? Right? Isn't it amazing that the world's richest country, United States of America, cannot find $25 million for alternative energy research by a Nobel Prize physicist? And Singapore, which is, by the way, in the US, I say it's 1/5 the size of Rhode Island, but it's at high tide it's something like 400. Sorry, at low tide it's 400 square miles or something. It's so tiny. It can find $5 billion for biotechnological research. And that's why, if you want to know what the real secret of Singapore's success is, it's the belief that because you are small, you have to be pragmatic, flexible, and adjust and adapt. And for that, you do need to have the good quality of people in government who don't try to stifle the economy. In fact, Singapore's tax rate, I think, Steve, is among the lowest in the world. 20%. It's 18%, by the way. Highest income tax rate, 18%. So despite the fact that we have one of the lowest income tax rates in the world, we're still able to provide the world's best public education system, one of the world's best transportation systems, the world's best airport, the world's best port. And if you fall sick anywhere between Tokyo and Tehran, come to Singapore. It's got the best medical facilities. So you can see if the right public policies, you can do an amazing amount of things. And that's why, for my closing line here, I'll say you should all come and study the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy.
I think in closing, because you have an airplane to catch, I do want to ask Mr. Forbes about the impact of what he's expecting from midterm elections next month in the United States.
Well, let me just say something on the 25 million. This will be a prelude to the elections. Somebody working with that administration shouldn't get 25 million. They've taken quite enough already. And in terms of research, there is a lot of research going on in the United States in alternative energies and elsewhere. In the midterms, the Republicans will win both houses, the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. They'll make enormous gains in, some enlightened people, but enormous gains in governorships. And then, as somebody once said, okay, the dog catches the truck, what happens now? And what happens next? And I think you're going to see a very real fight on taxes, but I think there are going to be some good things coming from it. So in the next 2 years, there's going to be a very real messy situation in the U.S. as both parties joust. And I think, though, that it's going to set the stage for major economic reforms, particularly after 2012 when there won't be the veto. One of the reasons I think some things can be done in the next 2 years, Bill, is precisely because the Democrats sense, and I know I'm stepping on some toes, but I'm not running for anything either, the feeling among a lot of Democrats now is that, although the White House would never admit it, is that the president has the feeling that he has done great things and that the casualties in this election are simply martyrs to the revolution, that he really isn't that upset that they're going to take a huge hit. When you go to Mount Rushmore, you don't see plaques saying George Washington had a bad midterm election in 1794. He thinks this is just a course, something to deal with politically, but he's not losing a lot of sleep over it. And the Democrats sense it, which I think means that after the elections, a lot of them are going to be open to policies because they know they're coming up, certainly senators in 2012, 2014, for a re-election. And they don't want this kind of albatross. So I think you're going to see some economic change, positive change, and starting with the spending side, but also in health care. We didn't touch on that, but I'll just say on health care, before Kishore has to leave, is I think if proper reforms are made, health care is going to go from a huge liability to one of the greatest dynamic growth industries in the world. You're doing a little bit of medical tourism in Singapore, as other smart countries are doing. This is going to be a huge growth industry, and if countries like the U.S. and Canada don't do it, Singapore and others are going to do it. People want health care, they want it affordable, they want productivity, they want the Steve Jobses of the world applying that productivity. We don't have a real free enterprise health care system. Discuss that later, but I think great things are going to be coming. So messy for 2 years, and then I think things are really going to get back on track positively.
In this country, and Mr. Day was a part of this, the there became a groundswell of opinion among the public that our country had gone into too much debt, that the debt and deficit issue had to be addressed. If anything, the people really got behind that push and forced government to react. It wasn't entirely that.